Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back again for another episode. And today I'm thrilled to have with me Jack Yu. Jack, first of all, welcome to the podcast. And thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
Hi, Tom. Thanks. It's a pleasure being here today.
Jack, could you tell us your professional background and your current role?
Yes. My name is Jack Yu. I lead generative AI for Experian Innovation Lab. I have been with Experian for I just crossed actually my 10-year mark. This is my first and only job, and I love it here. And I look forward to being here for the foreseeable future.
Well, Jack, I'm glad I've forgotten you've been with the company for 10 years. I think the name Experian is extraordinarily well known within the compliance community. So we're not going to need to completely introduce everyone to Experian. But I was fascinated about your personal journey into Gen AI. Could you tell us a little bit about, did someone just say, here, we want you to learn this? Did you just do like I did? And when ChatGPT or OpenAI and ChatGPT went live, you just started noodling around and went, wow, this could really be something. What was your journey to your current role?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would characterize that with a little bit of a lucky break, right place at the right time. So when ChatGPT first came out a couple years ago, um, I've always been fascinated by AI and technology in general. But when it first rolled out, Experian decided to say, "Hey, this slow. Let's actually shut everything down, make sure we're secure, we're compliant, um, and only until then we can, bring it up as a enterprise solution." So in that time, I actually explored the technology on my own. I've been a subscriber to the ChatGPT Pro plan ever since the beginning. I've just been doing a lot of tinkering, doing a lot of playing on the side. And when we decided to, that we were ready to take on this as a enterprise technology, I already had quite a bit of experience under my belt, and it just so happened that it was, being at the right place at the right time. We're looking for is domain experts to kind of get this off the ground, and they've seen I was able to do given my experience, and they say, "Hey, let's bring Jack in and let's see what we can do." And here I am.
You know, you are the first person who has told me something along the lines of the following. My company decided to take it a little bit slow. But on my own, I was exploring this, seeing what I could do, seeing what I could learn. And so when the company was ready to, as you said, move to or towards an enterprise solution, you had done the spade work to be ready to step up as an internal asset. I think that's just a great story. And I wish more companies would take advantage of homegrown talent like that. I'm self-employed, so I can't say my company saw something in me. But when ChatGPT came out, and I was an immediately sold as a pro user as well. But my experience was, I felt like I felt like I had felt like when I was 12 years old and my parents bought my first Encyclopedia Britannica. I literally thought the world is at my fingertips, and I remember that encyclopedia, literally from A to Z. And I mean, that tells you what kind of nerd I am. But it also explained why I was so thrilled by this technology. And I, like you, explored and explored and explored. And even today, that's available to someone. You can explore it and learn it, and it's almost a weekend's exploration can get you to the point where you can do some really interesting things. But enough about us. Let's move to Experian and y'all's approach to AI agents. Can you talk about your prioritization of AI agent deployment?
Hmm. Absolutely. So we at Experian have been developing and applying AI more than 2 decades now. So when we talk about AI agents here, this isn't a new experiment for us. Um, to really the next chapter of what we've been building for years. Now, I can sort of talk about this from two different perspective or angles on deployment. So one on the enterprise side, we use these agents as sort of pilot slash digital teammate inside of our Ascend platform. So they help financial institutions make faster, accurate, and more compliant decisions by surfacing insights from huge data sets, flagging early fraud signals and recommending the next steps. And we do all of that with human oversight. And I can't stress this enough that these AI agents need a level of oversight to make sure that we roll them out responsibly. Now, it's worth calling out that the intent here isn't that they're gonna, we want to use it to replace the work that people are doing. It is so that we want to do it so that they give teams back, precious time to focus on higher value work. And one of my favorite examples that I like to use is our model risk management that went live a couple months ago. And the intent is to monitor hundreds of models across a client portfolio and automatically flag performance drifts or documentation needs review. Now this used to take weeks of manual effort, and now we can get it to near real time, which is something that I'm particularly proud of. And if I may, I can also speak on the consumer side. So on the consumer side, we're doing something similar with Eva, our affectionate name for Experian Virtual Assistant. And it's our next generation chatbot that we want to meet consumers right at their moment of need, which is 24/7. And whether that's understanding a credit score change or resolving an account-based account-related issues, or getting financial guidance in plain language. And recently, we've even added a do it for me sort of agentic capability. So instead of clicking around the website trying to figure out where things are, people can now just ask Eva to lock or unlock, freeze or unfreeze their credit file. So it's a secure, simple way of delivering content to our consumers, and it just feels more personal.
Who is Ava?
Eva,
Eva.
Experian Virtual Assistant, EA.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said something a little bit earlier I really wanted to explore a little bit. And you said that I think you said both you and Experian actually saw the technology available as literally a next step, not something revolutionary, not something completely new, literally the next step, because you guys had been at the forefront of data analytics for years. I understand the steps or the technological leaps, but I think that's incredibly prescient, but also incredibly important that companies need to understand they're probably doing close to this already. And if you take this technology, it may be able to supercharge. Can you maybe give us your thoughts on that or expand a little bit on your remarks?
Yeah. So I think, yeah. So we've been in this AI space for a long time, and part of the reason why is so obviously I come from the innovation lab, so I'm a little bit biased here, but one of the reasons why we started an entity like the innovation lab, and actually back then it was called data labs, is that we want to look at things not by next quarter, but by next year, next 5 year, next 10 years. So we made the decision we made early on was to treat AI as a long-term investment, not a passing trend. So we've been doing the work before GPT came out. We're working on sort of the earlier version. Sorry, before ChatGPT came out, we're already working on earlier versions of these transformer models and building solutions. Although back then it was very challenging because the technology wasn't quite there yet. So you kind of have to rig things together, which now takes like a click of a button to do because the model has advanced so far. But we really looked at this, using a forward-looking mindset and to create a culture where innovation, isn't just encouraged; it's expected. And I think that's why we're able to play a role in why I think Experian has been able to sort of stay at the forefront of this particular wave of technology in AI.
Let me turn to some of the concerns that I typically hear from certainly a compliance officer, but also from the general counsel's office, as I'm a lawyer by professional background. They are concerned about balancing innovation with data privacy, identity or data protection, and even fraud prevention. How has Experian addressed these in your EVA system?
Yeah. So I think maybe I can sort of group that together under the umbrella of responsible AI. So for us, responsible AI isn't a department, isn't a it isn't the responsibility of a group, but rather it's a design philosophy. So every time we deploy, an AI agent or a model capability, we start by asking these, questions like, is it fair? Is it explainable? Secure? So what that means is that we want transparency to be built in and not bolted on later. Um, we don't want to launch a model or an AI assistant unless we can explain exactly how it works and make sure that it's performing consistently for everybody. And that's true both for inside and outside experience. So whether we're doing something to improve our internal efficiency or outward facing, enhanced client decisioning, fairness, enhanced client decisioning, fairness and accountability are non-negotiable. So in short, I think we want to innovate with confidence because we govern with intent. And to us, that's what responsible AI looks like at Experian.
So does that philosophy also reach into governance, that you don't see it as a different silo or a different group? It's all built in to the approach that Experian and yourself are taking?
Absolutely. I think one thing we've learned very quickly is that managing AI responsibly at scale, is something that you have to live every day. Um, and and inside Experian, we run a very complex ecosystem of AI models and agents that all have to sort of interact safely across our vast amounts of data, our systems, and also the business lines. Um, and before we can, go out to our clients, we have to eat our own dog food, right? We have to really battle test the things that we're building, you know, through all these hands-on experiences, so that then we can advise clients and give them tools that have already been really scrutinized internally inside what I consider one of the most data sensitive environments in the. So we take a very strict sort of self-governing position so that we can go out confidently to our clients.
Jack, I don't want to say the next level or generation because I'm loath to use that term when it comes to AI, but at least an advancement I'm seeing now is networks of AI agents, and having a sort of an AI supervisor oversee a network of AI agents, of course, with a human in the loop. But how does experience help customers manage their networks of agents, whether or not it's having a agent above them or in some other form?
Yeah, so I think we're getting to the area where network of agents sounds straightforward in theory. However, I think you sort of have to break things down into different layers. And I think and then I think once I sort of go through the different layers, I think it'll become clear that the governance really matters. So I think when people talk about agents, I think the flashy ones are the worker agents. Those are the ones that actually do the work. Now, you need two additional layers on top of that. And I think that's where the hard part happens. I think that's also where the magic happens. So a layer immediately above worker agents, I like to refer to as orchestration agents. Basically, they're sort of your traffic controllers, right? When a request comes in, you have to figure out which agent among my network of agents should I defer this task. How do I assign the best agent to do this task? So, but it's not enough to have orchestration, right? You also need another layer on top for governance, which to me just really means that you have this observers, these sentinels that says, I have all these activities that are happening under me, and I need to make sure that agents are doing what they're supposed to do. They stay within the guardrails of what they're able to do, and that they are properly authenticated. That they essentially the agents are doing what they promise to do. Right. So we have a multi-layer. We have governance at top. We have orchestration, and then we have the worker agent. So that to me is what constitutes as a multi-agent system. Now, the integration here is pretty complex, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier about we have to understand ourselves how before we can advise anyone else to adopt such system. So we do a lot of rigorous testing internally, understand the constraints, where the pitfalls are, and then we want to roll all that knowledge up so that we can share that with who may not have the same level of rigor and the technical resources to accomplish the same level of testing that we do, but ultimately to benefit to our clients' benefit.
So, what are some of the key governance challenges that your team is seeing, either internally or from customer feedback?
Yeah, um, I think what we've learned that managing AI at scale, it's not just a technology problem. I think it's also a leadership problem. Basically, you need alignments across data, compliance, engineering from day one, or things start to break down very quickly. And that's why our approach is built on collaboration and also explainability, right? Every system that we deploy, whether it's internally or for clients, has to be transparent, has to be auditable, and has to be usable by real teams who make real decisions every day. So those lessons really shape the products we build, and how we sort of help clients into integrating AI into their own operations. As a business advantage that they can actually trust. So the governance framework, we've battle tested them inside Experian, and then we're to share that with our clients.
And let's move to responsible use of generative AI. And that's a term that we hear a lot. I think I know what it means, but I think I only know what it means to me. So maybe I should start off by asking you, how do you define responsible use of Gen AI?
Yeah, I think being responsible means that from the get go, when you design any system, you have to ask yourself a couple of questions. Is what you're building fair? Can you explain what you're building to your clients? And is it secure? Um, and so we want to install that those I guess those gates or those checks at the beginning, and not bolted on later. So um, I think we loop in all of our legal compliance folks and our engineering team from day one, so that we can sit shoulder to shoulder to make sure that everything that we build on the engineering side is vetted by our legal and compliance side, so that we're doing things in a very calculated, very strategic, and also very responsible way. So that when the product is done, we don't need to have this sort of a well, I was gonna say we don't need to have a comprehensive sort of review, because we've already reviewed every step of the way, right? So it doesn't become a sort of gargantuan task for someone at the end to say, "Hey, did we build this thing under the conditions of responsible AI?" Because we've already did it every step of the way, and we have documented clearly, so that by the end, it's very easy to look back and trace all our steps backwards to ensure that we're doing everything right.
I think you just answered the question I was going to ask you in your last clause, even. But let me rephrase it a little bit, because I was very much intrigued by when you started that answer. You said, we're able to explain to the client what we did. And then you went on for more detail. I wanted to ask you, by explaining to the client, can we equate that to transparency? But one more step, if you agree that that definition of transparency is accurate or close to accurate, can we then move to, and you answered this, but I want to hear you say it again because it's so powerful, documentation. And so, once again, with my legal background, I say that if you can't show it to a regulator with documentation, it never happened. An auditor would say, if you can't show me the documentation, I can't test it and I can't prove it that it's accurate. So I wanted to maybe ask you about transparency, but also the documentation. Are you able to provide both of those to a client in case a regulator comes knocking, or more typically their own internal audit department will come to compliance or whatever unit within the company is using your tool and say, we need to audit this to make sure Experian is delivering what we're paying for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit it. You hit it on the head here. Um, Transparency is absolutely crucial. And whether compliance, whether it's for audit, or whether it's just clients wanting to understand how did you get from point A to point B. From so a lot of people look at AI as a black box, which is very unfortunate because it's not supposed to be that way, right? And most companies accept the fact that we give them, hey, here's a black box, it solves your problem without being able to explain why. So we make sure that every decision or every model output that we generate can be traced back and explained in human terms. And that transparency helps both our clients and regulate why something happens, not just what something happens. So documentation is absolutely paramount. And documentation and I guess the level of observability that it brings also helps us to make sure that before we go out to clients, we know everything that's happened, right? That we can troubleshoot, before any concerns that even get to the client level. To your point, documentation, transparency, absolutely paramount, and we want to build that in. That is something that we deal with on a daily basis, not at the end, or not as or yeah, not at the end.
Jack, when you sit across from a new or prospective client, are you talking to a chief compliance officer? Are you talking to a CISO? Talking to a CTA? Are you talking to a company president, board of directors? All of the above? None of the above? Who is the are the people you're speaking to about the experience solution or solutions?
Yeah, I think all of the above. I think when we pitch solutions, all the folks that you mentioned, they all have a vested interests, right? Because we're saying here's a solution that's going to help you guys make better decisions. And all those folks are going to have various questions on the spectrum of can you do this securely, is there any concerns with privacy, are there any issues with legal compliance with the latest regulations. It just privacy laws are evolving really quickly, and we have to build that adaptability into our system. So all those folks have a range of questions that we have to answer. So we have to be prepared before we go out to them that we know the answers to those questions.
Let me change the focus a little bit to fraud fighting, if I can do that, and the future of fraud prevention. How can AI help prevent fraud or AI driven fraud with generative AI?
Mhm. Yeah. So fraud is a real challenge. And to make it harder, it's changing faster than ever, right? We're now in an environment where the same tools that can help us with innovation are also now being used by fraudsters to create like deep fakes, synthetic identities, and more sophisticated attacks than we've ever seen before. So the reality is we have to use AI to fight AI. So in our most recent identity report, we found that over a third of companies are already doing this. They're already using AI, including Gen AI, to strengthen their defenses. And more than 70% of the 70% of the people that we surveyed expect AI generated fraud to become a major issue within the next year. So that tells me two things. One, the threat is very real, and two, the organizations are already taking it very seriously. So at Experian, we've been using AI in our fraud prevention tools for a very long time. So we've already seen this evolution firsthand. And our role is to help our clients to stay, one step ahead, right? Because the goal is to protect their customers, their data, and their reputation while navigating this increasingly complex regulatory environment. One recent example is our partnership with Mastercard, which brings their identity verification technology into our Ascend platform, and this integration helps them to confirm in real time, hey, is that the real you, the consumer, while reducing friction for legitimate users and stopping fraud earlier in the process. So basically, just to summarize, the same technology that's making fraud more sophisticated is also helping us, protect people, right? So kind of framing this from the other direction. And you combine innovation with responsibility. I think that's really where a lot of progress happens.
Jack, as we move towards the end of this episode, I wanted to conclude by asking you what excites you the most about the next chapter of AI innovation at Experian?
Yeah. Well, first, I want to say, I want to start by saying thank you, Tom, for the opportunity to chat today. Honestly, what excites me the most is that AI is on the precipice of finally delivering on its promise. I think we're really moving from hype to practical impact. So things are actually happening, which is outstanding. And we're seeing it making a difference in how, at Experian, how people access credit, how fraud gets stopped before it happens, and how businesses can make faster and more fair decisions. And to me, that's really rewarding, right? Because those aren't abstract use cases. These are moments that genuinely improve people's lives. And I think here's the one thing I want to emphasize is that the more exciting this AI thing is, the more imperative that we have to do it the right way. And I'm particularly proud of how Experian is approaching this, with like we talked about just now, with transparency, with responsibility, and we have a deep respect for trust. We've been doing AI for more than two decades, for a long time. So we have a good understanding of what good governance looks like. And now we're pairing that with the generative tools that make technology more intuitive and accessible for everyone. I think we're really converging at the perfect time. So I guess the next chapter, isn't about AI replacing people. I think it's about helping them do their best work, to do it faster, and to do it more safely. And that's a future that I'm really excited to be part of.
Jack, unfortunately, we are now in at the end of our time for this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you if any of our listeners want to connect with you, find out more about the services or products you've discussed, or find out more about Experian, what would be the best place or places for them to go?
Absolutely. You can find all the things that I've discussed on our company website, Experian. You're also welcome to check us out on LinkedIn, both the for the company, and also I also have a LinkedIn profile as well. I'm open to connect and have a chat with anybody who's interested in this topic.
And I'm just going to add for anybody listening to this podcast as opposed to watching it on YouTube. Um, Jack is one of the most passionate people I've come across around AI, and the sheer and utter joy he has. I know it's coming across in his voice, but if you could see him on YouTube, it would be exponentially more. So even if you're listening to this podcast on audio, you want to check it out on YouTube because he's really having a lot of fun. Jack, thank you again for coming on the podcast. I hope we can continue this conversation.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.